Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. I assumed I would only be visiting Walmart. That's all. Just a straightforward journey following a demanding day. Sandwich bread, milk, cereal, and perhaps eggs if they weren't too expensive. But 4 weeks, the events that transpired inside that store and right after we left would linger in my mind at night. It was June, the type of June that occurs in Mesa, Arizona, and by midday, the asphalt was already pliable. Additionally, by 5 p.m. the sun seemed to have a personal grudge. Liam, my 9-year-old son, had spent the entire day at home. I was juggling remote work and parenting with the onset of summer break. I had spent that afternoon bouncing between folding laundry, making Zoom calls, and attempting to determine why the money for summer camp still hadn't cleared. I had to stock the refrigerator and get my mind straight. Liam, shoes on. We're doing a quick Walmart run, I said, as I snatched up my keys. He rushed out of his room, already sporting those scuffed Spider-Man sneakers. May I inspect the aisle? Of Nerf, I answered, taking my wallet. You can look, however, we're not making any purchases today. Deal, he smiled, deal. The large Walmart off Southern Avenue was our neighborhood store. The kind where the air conditioner always feels a little faulty and there are never enough carts. However, it has everything and is close. At approximately 5:15 p.m., we pulled into the parking lot. Light flash bulbs, the sun glares off windshields. There was the usual jumble of bustle and noise inside. Toddlers sobbing, carts squeaking, and the strange hum of too many lights. I steered the trolley past the veggies, and Liam headed straight for the toy aisle. I informed him that I would be checking school supplies 2 aisles over. It began as usual. I peered casually over the top of the aisle to see how Liam was doing. I was looking through bargain notebooks. He was squatting close to the bottom shelf, looking through a Nerf dark clearance bin. However, there was also another person present. At the end of the aisle stood a slender man, possibly in his mid-40s, dressed in faded trousers, a baseball cap, and a grey t-shirt that was tucked in. The fact that he wasn't shopping threw me off guard. He was holding a random plastic toy dinosaur. There was no cart or basket. He did not speak to Liam, not even close to him. However, he was merely standing there doing nothing. I gave him a look. He glanced up, locked eyes, then turned away, heading down the next aisle. It was uncomfortable. I dismissed it, though. Perhaps he was merely passing the time. After a few minutes, I went back to get Liam. Now he was telling me about this special edition Fortnite game, comparing blasters or something. I gave an absent nod, but I looked around. The man had returned. This time, he pretended to browse while standing at the far end of the aisle, next to the RC vehicles, holding nothing. Yet by myself, yet without a cart. All right, I said with a smile, let's finish the list together. Liam didn't protest. He must have picked up on something in my tone. I turned around as we headed for groceries. The man had also turned, maintaining his distance, but he was silent as if he should have been there but wasn't. He went past the far end of the cereal aisle once more. Nothing has been found yet. Now I could feel it in my gut as much as in my head. You can't express as an easy sensation until it's too late. I went back through the frozen goods and pretended that I had forgotten something. And there he was, loitering behind the glass doors of microwavable meals, hands in his pockets, peering sideways, without even feigning to browse this time. That was sufficient. I leaned down and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Now stay straight by me." "All right," he gave a nod. Didn't inquire as to why. I pushed the trolley more quickly as I made my way to the self-checkout. When I looked back, once, he was there, round the corner as if he was going there but never quite made it. He didn't follow, though, after we went through the metal detectors. Through the sliding doors, I looked around the lot. Nothing. Perhaps that was it, I thought. After paying and packing, we ventured out into the glaring late sunlight. Our vehicle was parked next to a cart return, 3 rows down. I was searching for the fob while balancing the goods when I was startled by Liam's voice. "That guy from inside, isn't he?" I raised my head. In the row opposite ours, he was crouching between 2 cars and acting like he was having a hard time tying his shoe. Just him gazing, no bag, no cart. I remained silent. I simply pressed the key, popped the trunk, then unlocked the rear door. "Liam is in now." Without hesitation, he obeyed. After quickly loading the groceries and slamming the trunk, I shut Liam's door. After that, I did something without giving it any thought. I ignored the perspiration on my back and continued walking straight through the heat into the store, not turning to check behind me until I was through the sliding doors. I went inside and looked around the parking lot. He had stopped acting and was now standing. He had gotten up and was facing our car as if he was waiting, hands in his pockets. I went directly to customer service on foot. "Someone is outside next to our car, and I believe he followed us inside the store. He wasn't going shopping." After a moment of hesitation, the woman behind the counter called for a manager. A man in a blue vest, short and balding, approached. Security was then summoned. Together, we made our way back to the entrance. He had left. "No vehicle is leaving. Nobody is leaving." Simply disappeared. He was there from the toy aisle to the grocery store. According to the security footage they retrieved, no purchases, no talking, just lingering, just trailing. I wasn't satisfied, even though they reported it, marked it, and promised to keep an eye out if he returned. I made a report on the non-emergency police line, filled them in on everything, and provided a description. A store manager supported me, but there wasn't much they could do because there wasn't a real conflict or crime. The fact that nothing occurred was what astounded me, because it nearly did. He seemed to be practicing, following us as if it were normal, and he was aware of how long he might linger before raising suspicions. He had done this before, never too close, nor too far. As if he was aware of to seek, the following morning, I purchased a dash cam. If it didn't stop someone, I didn't care, just in case. I wanted proof. Since then, I haven't allowed Liam to go unaccompanied in a store. A week later, he asked me why he now had to be close to the cart at all times. I didn't mince words, because the way that man was staring at you bothered me. Nor was it innocuous curiosity. It wasn't only strange, it was strategic. He bided his time for the ideal angle. It was a crowded supermarket in full daylight when I looked away. However, he did follow. We were treated as though we were on his list. And I learned for the first time that often the most frightening people are those who never say a word. Hovering was never my style as a mother. My parents let me to ride my bike till the street lights came on while I was growing up. I always assumed that I would treat my daughter in the same way, give her some freedom to explore. She's brilliant, attentive, nice, not the kind of kid you're worrying about. On a steamy Tuesday in early July, that changed. At Bygham's Market, it was intended to be a brief dash back to school. This massive retail store is located in Millersburg, Indiana's more sedate area. The type of store that offers everything under one roof, from wiper fluid to watermelon. I reasoned that by leaving early, we would avoid the commotion. The actual back-to-school throng wouldn't arrive until late July, and the establishment would still be fully stocked. At that time, my daughter Ava was 7. She had one of those infectious full-body chuckles, and these huge glasses. She had inquiries all the time, what clouds feel like, how glue is formed, and why cats purr. She had the kind of curiosity that made people grin, but at night it made me double-check my hair. The standard items were already in our cart: a rainbow set of gel pens, glue sticks, folders with cartoon characters, and a watermelon-shaped plastic pencil box. The school supply area, which backed onto the toy aisles, was where we were. "Can I go look at the dolls?" she said, embracing the cart as though it were a jungle gym. "I take it they're only 2 aisles away?" I inquired. She gave a nod. "Okay, but keep in mind what we stated. If someone isn't wearing a name tag and the red shirt, don't talk to them. Come get me if something feels strange. I'm simply here comparing binder sizes." She smiled, saluted me briefly, and ran away. I took a look at my phone. The time was 11:22 a.m. I started looking through binder rings to see if her school permitted the metal variety, and I emailed my husband to remind him to pick some milk on the way home. I must have heard her voice no more than 2 minutes later, just conversing, not yelling, not frightened. Then I heard a voice again, a man's calm, quiet, and welcoming. In my stomach, something twisted. I moved to the end of the aisle and shoved the trolley aside. Ava was standing with her back to me, clutching a pink-haired doll. A man in his mid-40s or older, wearing short sleeves, a button-up shirt, olive, cargo pants, and a baseball cap stood about 4 feet away. 4 feet away. Asterisk cap that reads really well outside. He wasn't making contact with her. He was not even within touching distance. He stood casually, as if he had accidentally bumped into her as a neighbor. As though he had said this 100 times. He was grinning, not a grin, but a gentle practice smile. He indicated the rear. "You got to know where to look," he added, "of the shop." I turned the curve completely and began to walk, not sprint, not shout, just enough to let him know I was there. They keep the good toys on clearance near the loading bay. Most folks never even check back there. As I approached, I put a steady, calm hand on Ava's shoulder and heard her reply, "But that's not where the dolls are." "Hey, sweetie," I acknowledged. "Do we know this man?" Ava asked, looking up and blinking once. No, the man's face remained unchanged. He remained smiling. He stepped, palms up on his back, as if I'd overheard him reading a book. "I apologize, merely being cordial." I informed her that there were some inexpensive dolls back there because she mentioned that she enjoyed them. "Are you employed here?" I inquired. He gave a head shake. "No, only going shopping." Then he turned and left. No guilt, no rush, just turned and walked. I took Ava's hand and went with her. He didn't approach the register. He didn't pick up any carts. He did not look at the shelves. He passed the gadgets, then the men's clothes, then the outdoor equipment. He didn't slow down. Then he went past the garden area, past the seasonal decor, and straight out the automated doors. Just gone, no bag, no cart, no receipt. I didn't yell or chase after him. I simply stood at the window, unable to comprehend its normalcy. The deliberate, silent departure. I didn't respond when Ava inquired, was he bad, looking up at me. I simply accompanied her on her walk to customer service. The woman behind the counter, who was maybe 22, was obviously upset, but was making an effort to remain composed. I told her everything. Brian, the floor manager, was flagged down by her. I described everything: his height, the jeans, the cap, and the way he left without making a purchase. He kept his hands off her. I told him he didn't act aggressively or yell. However, he attempted to guide her to the rear of the shop. He indicated that there were free toys in the stock area. After giving us a slow nod, Brian led us to a podium with security pulling up video feeds close to gadgets. He promised to investigate and find out which camera he might have appeared on. He returned after 10 minutes of waiting. We were unable to clearly see him at the front. Cameras. If the entrances are packed, the angles may occasionally miss them. Nobody here knew who he was. Do you think he's done it before? I responded. He didn't respond. Asked if I would like to leave my phone number. Though I didn't anticipate a call, I did. We didn't complete our shopping. I held Ava's shoulder the entire time as I walked her out. She didn't protest or wriggle. I believe she was aware of the problem in her own way. I prepared her favorite dish that evening, shells and cheese, the kind with too much butter. At the table, we ate. I sat next to her rather than across from her. I said, "Sweetie," very carefully. When someone talks to you like that, someone you don't know, you come get me, okay? Even if they seem nice. Was he attempting to steal me? Her empty bowl caught my attention. I'm not sure, and I didn't. That was my biggest fear. He seems harmless. Didn't appear menacing. He had the appearance of an uncle. He pretended to fit in. That's what I remembered. I asked the principal. Her school was hosting a stranger danger seminar prior to autumn when I called 2 days later. I asked if they could perform one earlier in the year, as they normally did. He concurred. Ava never longer goes off by herself. In shopping since that day, she remains near. I never wanted her to understand, but she does now. Additionally, I give that man more force than I would like to. Admit it, the reason is not what he did, but rather what he nearly did. He exuded confidence and casualness, as if he was aware of how long a parent would take to select a binder, as if he had already done it. And I've kept asking myself, what if I'd been preoccupied for another minute? What if I hadn't heard her voice? What then? You always believe that you are immune to it. You would notice. You tell yourself. You would anticipate it. However, not all monsters have claws. They occasionally have baseball caps and quiet voices. They're also only 1 aisle away. I never imagined that a mouthwash stop would cause me to wonder about our true level of safety in public areas. Late August of 2021 was the time, yet tight, yet humid. Those strange interim months following the worst of the pandemic, when everything seemed to be returning to normal but wasn't. Everyone was still a little tense, even though more people were out and stores had reopened, as if we were all anticipating the next mishap. I was a private night security contractor working the 3rd shift at a textile depot south of Florence, South Carolina, at the time. Lot of walking, long hours, and no air conditioning. I was renting a studio apartment behind a car dealership, and most days I hardly saw the sun. The routine drained me, but the pay was decent. Since it was less congested back then, I would frequently stop by the neighborhood supermarket or Walmart on my way home. I got off at 6:15 a.m. that night. My back hurts from standing in those fucking boots for so long. And I'm sweating and sore. I had not taken off my uniform. I had a radio clipped to my belt, a navy shirt, black tactical pants, and a badge clipped on. I had run out of necessities, even though I was no longer on duty. Deodorant, mouthwash, and a fresh pair of socks were required. In addition, I didn't want to be without my phone charger because it had started working strangely, quick in and out, just basic errands. I parked on the side close to the lawn and garden door of the Walmart on Ashbury Road, which I had visited 100 times before. Even though it was early, the sun had already risen, and there were a few cars strewn about the lot. Still thinking about the call I had taken at 4 a.m., I recall yawning as I reached for a cart. Concerning a raccoon setting off the motion sensor, it had been one of those weeks. At first, I didn't notice him. He blended in, a tidy grey polo shirt, khaki cargo pants, and work boots are worn by someone with an average physique, possibly in their early 50s. His gait made me think of someone who was accustomed to giving commands. No slouching, arms relaxed, straight back, morning, sir. Forgot your phone out by your car, maybe. Interrupted my progress as I was making my way to the hygiene aisle. The man was standing near to the seasonal aisle divider, about 10 feet back, putting one hand on a display rack's end. He hadn't approached me. I gave him a look. Apologies. He grinned. I wanted to let you know. If you want to make sure before someone takes it, you may have left your phone outside your car. I gave my pocket a pat. I left my phone exactly where I left it. No, I said. I have it. But thanks, he nodded, as though he meant it. But there was a problem. There was no Walmart vest on him. Not even a clipboard, a walkie, or a name tag. However, he stood as if he was accustomed to being inside. You're employed here? I inquired. I assist. He responded nonchalantly. Just keeping an eye out for things related to loss avoidance. I brought up a furrow. Have you got identification? He gave a small laugh. We are no longer required to wear them. There were too many client complaints during CO. You were aware of the situation. Bullshit. Every genuine employee I'd encountered, including Postco, had at least something recognizing them, particularly those who work in loss prevention. I mumbled as I resumed my slow walking. I walked down the aisle with bath products and shampoo. I looked over my shoulder as I paused to get deodorant. Once more, he found himself halfway down the aisle, merely perusing a shelf without paying much attention to anything. I clenched my neck. You learn to read posture from years of working in security. He had to alert, to square shoulders. I accelerated, made a rapid right turn, turning left beyond aisle 10. I landed up in toys, after circling around electronics. I was hoping he would follow, as expected. A few minutes later, he turned the corner as if he were simply aimlessly strolling. I pretended to look through remote control automobiles, while I stood motionless. Without glancing up, I said, "Everything, good, just checking on things," he said, taking a step toward her. "Recently, there's been a lot of theft. You'd be shocked." I turned to look at him. "Will you ever present me with identification?" There was a small alteration in his expression. Less amiable, tighter mouth. "You should show more deference," he remarked. "All I'm doing is my job. Next, get your boss. Get your boss. Right here. I'll wait." At that point, his entire attitude changed. The phony politeness faded. He gave me another look, and then huffed briefly. He responded, "Whatever, man," and pivoted on his heel. I remained motionless as he left, heading back toward the door by the self-checkout rather than any employee area. My chest thumped with my heart. I didn't like that interaction one bit. There was a problem. I strolled over to the front desk, where the customer service was located. Someone was returning a blender, with the assistance of a young woman, wearing a blue vest. She grinned at the sight of me waiting. "Am I able to assist you?" "Yeah," I replied. Her smile vanished as she said, "I think there's a guy in here posing as security." I asked him, "What does he look like?" His attire, stature, physique, and his words. She had to take a look at the elderly lady behind her. "A manager, perhaps. Will you please wait a moment?" she said. After a minute, a short, square-billed man emerged from the back office with a radio and a legitimate badge. Daniel, Asset Protection, was written on his name tag. I reiterated everything. Daniel scowled deeply. He mentioned that we had previously had someone who fit that description loitering in the parking lot, usually just before sunset or early in the morning. When I last saw the man, I volunteered to lead him out the front exit. He was not visible to us inside. While I stood close to the registers, looking out through the sliding glass doors, Daniel used his radio to call another team member, and they checked the parking lot. He was not visible to me. It was 15 minutes before Daniel came back. He gave a head shake. "He's no longer there. Once more. I inquired. Daniel gave a nod. "This month, there have been 3 reports. He's not interested in products. He goes after consumers. Frequently by themselves, early, and with others who appear worn out or preoccupied. We believe he is attempting to entice people outdoors by saying things like, 'You dropped something,' or 'He's with security.' For what purpose?" Daniel paused before responding. "Robbery, perhaps worse, is the best assumption. Perhaps collaborating with someone, hard to say. Shortly after, I completed a brief incident form and departed. They volunteered to walk me to my vehicle. I agreed. That day, I didn't get all I came in for. I didn't use the charger. I just wanted to lock the doors and get back in my car. It wasn't what he said that most stayed with me. It was his appearance of normalcy. Calm, self-assured, as if they knew just how much time he had before he was confronted. People like him rely on you being exhausted, preoccupied, and courteous. So I made sure to glance over my shoulder when I started shopping that morning during peak hours and got pepper spray online. They rely on your desire to remain silent. However, I've seen too many reports and worked too many night shifts to comply. And now, if someone in casual attire requests that I accompany them to their I don't give them a second, automobile wall, says, just come over here for a moment, I firmly refuse and I make my way directly to the cameras and the audience. It's not because I'm afraid people won't believe me that I don't typically share this tale. Many don't, but because I've been making an effort to quit thinking about it myself for the past year. However, I always end up back there when I enter a public restroom, especially when I'm by myself. Once more, I hear boots. The air shifts once more. I feel like I'm being watched. This occurred on a Thursday in early October of last year. It was approximately 6:30 p.m. and I had made a stop at a Walmart en route to go to work. Nothing like a huge, theatrical shopping expedition. I had some stuff to pick up. Hair ties, protein bars, travel-sized toiletries, and one of those electrolyte beverages I make sure to pack for night shifts. Crest Hill Medical in Ravensfield, a mid-sized town just outside of Pittsburgh, is where I work the overnight emergency room shift. I have been an RN for the past 8 years or so. I brought up that point not out of compassion, but because anyone who works in a hospital long enough gains a second instinct for people, danger, and the moment when a suspicion turns into a certainty. I hadn't had time to stop by home that evening. Because I had gone to the gym first, I still had to put on my scrubs then. I thought I had enough time to stop at Walmart, grab what I needed, and change in the hospital locker room, even though I was running late. I knew I had to urinate by the time I was ready to check out. Not in a desperate way, but with the thought that I'll regret not going now. The restrooms were located directly next to the customer service counter at the front of the store. It's like 100 bathrooms you've seen. Cracked tile flooring, fluorescent lighting, antiseptic beige paint that most likely complies with regulatory codes, and the subtle perfume of lemon disinfectant all attempt to hide something worse and older. When I entered, it was deserted. Nothing. No reverberating footsteps. No voices. I walked from the end to the second stall, hung my little basket, and took a seat. I recall going through my phone's menu. I received a meme from my husband, Nate, stating that nurses are 40% sarcastic and 60% intoxicated. I heard the bathroom door open as I was responding to his text. Click, next, footsteps. Steadfast, self-assured, without sneakers, flats, boots, or heels, they entered and paused. Somewhere, not in front of the mirror, not next to a stall. From where I sat, I couldn't see. I also didn't bend over to look. At first, I assumed that someone had entered and was looking at themselves in the mirror, possibly waiting for a child, texting, or reapplying lipstick. However, nothing took place. There was silence, no hand dryer, no coughing, no shuffle, no sighing, no stall doors opening. 1 minute went by, and then 2. Nothing has changed. The speed at which your brain changes is odd. I was initially just irritated. People are constantly doing strange things. However, my stomach began to tighten after a few minutes. It wasn't merely silent. Still, it was deliberate. I put my phone down and paid attention. Nothing has changed. I glanced beneath the store wall by leaning forward just enough. Black leather boots with sharpened toes that were clean and undamaged were present near the tiled wall close to the entrance. facing the line of stalls, simply standing motionless, without moving or shifting positions. My heart used to kick forcefully, before settling into that quick, shallow rhythm. Dread, not panic just yet. I waited. I didn't move or flush. I simply remained there, breathing as softly as possible and straining my ears. What was the reason behind her silence? Then the illogical began to creep in. Did she have sleepwalking? Had she become frightened after hearing me? Was there someone she was waiting for? However, none of those made sense because she had entered, proceeded a short distance, halted, and remained still ever since. I looked at the time. It had been -1 minute. Silence for 8 minutes. I grabbed my phone and took the only sensible action. I sent Nate an SMS. Strange circumstance. In Walmart's restroom, a woman is standing by the door without doing anything. Been here for a long time. He gave me a call. Immediately, I replied in a whisper. I whispered in a low voice, "Don't say my name, just stay on the line." I tried to explain without making noise when he asked what was going on. And that's when I heard it. Click, one of the boots creaked after turning a little. The bathroom door opened gently, the door creaked and then closed again with a gentle thud. But I didn't hear her go. I waited for 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. I leaned forward once more after that. She had left. No legs, no boots, no noise. I got up, flushed, reached for my basket with a rubbery hand, and walked out slowly. There was nobody in the restroom. It felt empty, even the air. I immediately went to customer service. I spoke to the woman behind the counter in a calm tone. I've been schooled to remain composed under duress. I described the incident. She asked if I wanted her to call a manager and nodded slowly, as if she had already heard something stranger. Yes, I replied. A man approached wearing a red vest and a headphone. I also told him. Security was then summoned. A man with a lot of weight Brian approached and volunteered to escort me to my vehicle. I explained that I only needed to change before I left for work. Still, he walked me out. Thank you. I kept thinking about it later that evening. Not because anything took place. Nothing happened, but because it felt as though something nearly happened. Around 3 in the morning, the hospital was silent. I messaged Nate once again to find out if he thought I was exaggerating. The strangest part, however, wasn't his response. No, not at all. The following day was the most peculiar aspect. I was curious, so I went there Walmart once more, merely to observe, not to challenge anyone. It was the same woman who had previously worked in customer service. In a low voice, I asked her if they had ever watched the video. I blinked, but she entered. Correct. She leaned in and whispered. Security said nothing showed up on the bathroom cameras, but we don't have cameras inside. Just at the door. She paused. They said that just you were seen entering during that time on the restroom hallway video. I was motionless as I stood. Nobody else. She gave a head shake. 10 minutes later, no. An elderly woman, followed by a mother with 2 children, but no one in front of or during you. That's what they stated. I could see she wanted to stop talking since she was uneasy. I refrained from pushing. When I returned to the hospital that evening, I couldn't get rid of the feeling because, if I was the only one using the restroom, what in the world did I hear? What was it that I saw? What was that silent observer standing there in boots? I've thought about it 1,000 times. Perhaps the camera angle missed her sneaking in directly behind me. There might be a blind spot. Perhaps she entered and exited so stealthily that she failed to notice. But what I observed is known to me. I understand how I felt. Confusion wasn't the issue. Furthermore, there was no reluctance. That was in the waiting position. She departed. After I spoke to Nate and the male voice reverberated through the restroom door. If I can avoid it, I have quit using public facilities. Every time I look beneath the stall doors, before I enter, I always listen. The fact that nothing happened altered me in some way. However, something nearly did, and I'd rather never know what it was. I didn't do crazy things as a child. I'm Eliza, and up until that point in my life, I had never stolen anything, not even a piece of gum. However, making poor choices might feel like minor successes when you're 16, impetuous, upset with the world, and fed up with being broke. I got into a heated argument with my foster mother that morning. She kept reminding me that I wasn't truly hers, so I told her I was done playing family. If I didn't agree with the rules, she instructed me to leave. Yes, I did. Just my backpack and a hoodie knotted around my waist, no phone, no money. Taking the 600 bus to the Omega Mart Supercenter off Highway 91. I thought I may grab a snack. If no one was watching, and spend a few hours strolling about somewhere with air conditioning. To be honest, I had no intention of stealing. However, I noticed this set of velvet scrunchies close to the health and beauty section. 8 hues that seemed luxurious and velvety. Like other girls, I pictured myself wearing them to school. I will no longer use broken rubber bands to conceal my hair in untidy buns. I wanted them so badly that I stuffed one in my hoodie's front pocket while feigning to look up costs, even though it was stupid. The container, I crumpled it and threw it in the cleaning aisle behind a pile of sparkly paper towel packs. I should have left at that moment, but I chose not to. Someone touched me on the shoulder after I had been in the snack section for a little too long, wondering if I could also steal a small bag of chips. Cold, calloused, heavy fingers. A deep voice murmured, "Come with me." From behind, when I turned around, I saw a man who was easily 63, muscular like a linebacker, with a sun-spotted bald scalp and a close-cropped beard that obscured his face. In addition to his navy windbreaker and black slacks, he had a badge that read Omega Security on his left breast, which glinted faintly. I pretended to be dumb as I inquired, "What is this about?" "The word theft," he said bluntly. My cheeks started to get heated. "Okay, look, I'm sorry. I can just pay for it. I didn't even leave the store." He didn't reply. Simply put a big hand on my upper arm, not roughly, but in a way that indicated, "Don't test me." He then started to lead me away from the checkout lines and toward grey doors that are marked employees only and are located next to the storage passageway. I wanted to back off and raise my voice, but something about his cool, collected movements made me think that resisting would only make things worse. We entered the storage area through the doors. Dimly lighted by flickering overheads, tall metal shelves loomed on both sides, lined with boxes and crates. Then he switched, a light switch above a tiny door that was wedged between two mop buckets. They unveiled a set of concrete stairs that led down into the shadows. "Let's move," he murmured, pointing to the floor. I stopped. He didn't respond, but stared at me blankly. "Where's the office? Don't you usually have cameras, or like someone else?" I started down the stairs, but as soon as I reached the third stair, I heard a wham, and the door above slammed shut behind me. My heart stopped, so I turned around and ran back up. His hand tightened slightly on my arm, and I assumed it was just some janky layout, and they kept the security stuff downstairs. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. What the hell? I muttered, pounding my fists against the metal, but got no answer. I took out my phone, but there was no signal, of course. The basement was big, wider than I thought, almost like an underground garage, but there were no cars, no people, just a cement floor, exposed pipes, and in the middle of the room, an old wooden chair, with chains and rusted cuffs hanging from its arms, bolted to the wall behind it. The stairs creaked behind me as I slowly descended, and the air became heavy with moisture and mildew. I muttered, "This is insane." The room was so quiet that the only sound I could hear was a gentle trickle off to the left. I didn't want to go any farther, but sitting on the bottom step felt even worse. I knelt down and looked around, and I noticed that something smelled off on the far end, where it was dark, like meat, old spoiled meat. I wanted to think this was some weird scare tactic to prevent loss, maybe even a dumb joke. But then I remembered the man's uniform. His hands were covered in dried mud, and he railed like sweat and earth and copper. His badge had appeared loose, almost stitched on with thick thread, and he didn't wear a name tag like everyone else in the store. I grabbed my phone once more and paced beside the stairwell until a bar came to light. Sensing that this man wasn't Omega Mart security, I dialed the store and said, "Thank you for calling Omega Mart. This is Kristen," said a cheerful voice. "How may I assist you?" I stumbled. "Someone took me down here to your basement. A man." He said, "I took something." He looked like security, but now I don't know. I think he locked me in. What basement? I backed into the far wall near the chair and grabbed one of the chains, wrapping it around my wrist like a makeshift weapon, and held the chair up with one hand, knees shaking, as Kristen asked, the brightness fading from her voice, and the door above creaked open just then. Footsteps, someone whistling, creak, the sound of wood groaning under weight. Well, the older man rasped. "She's a little spitfire, huh?" The first was the man who grabbed me, still wearing that fake uniform. The second was an older man, barefoot, wearing only pants and a shirtless outfit, his eyes wide with delight, and his grey hair matted in the back. "Sit down in the chair, my love, will be considerate," the security imposter stated. I felt my stomach twist. My hands were sweating so bad I nearly dropped the chair. "You tight." The elderly man licked his lips and touched himself, saying, "I'll bet you are," I said. "Get the hell away from me. I'll murder you." They chuckled. "She believes she will benefit from that creaky old chair." The impersonator laughed. "He's feisty," which I enjoy. With a smile, the elderly man removed his belt and wrapped it over his knuckles. I took a step back until my heels struck the wall. No place to go. At that time, the chair felt heavier. "Who's down there?" From the stairway came a male voice. The men stopped. Footfalls were heard above. "Alarms are going off in stores. Who's interfering?" "About." The two men became frightened. The elderly one growled, "Go, go." They scurried to the far end of the room and vanished via a secret door that I had previously missed. One that went behind the store into the woods. An alarm burst to life as they opened it. The ceiling flashed red lights. A boy sprinted down the stairs. Emblem of the store. Caleb is the name tag. When he noticed my wide eyes, he stopped. "Holy shit, are you all right?" I sobbed as I fell to the floor after dropping the chair. "I am security," he claimed. "I was locked down here by him." Caleb called for assistance. Kristen, the actual manager, arrived shortly after. Police officers, too. A few security cameras had captured the man in the uniform, but only the first time I walked into the store. He was not listed in the personnel files. Nobody was aware of his identity. The elderly man was never captured on video. Behind the pipes in the basement, they discovered a decaying dog carcass. The secret door opened into thick woods and led to a rusty storm exit. While the police took my statement, Kristen provided me with a blanket and waited with me. "What would happen now?" I asked her, softly. "They'll investigate," she said. "Security is upstairs and always has been, so Eliza, from now on, don't trust anyone unless they have a legitimate Omega Mart name tag." I nodded, while still trembling. She clutched my shoulder and said, "I just wanted a stupid scrunchie. The men were never located. You're lucky. Some girls don't get to walk back up those stairs. Not yet, anyhow." I never doubted myself in front of others. I don't tend to overreact. As a single mother of 2 children, ages 8 and 13, I've grown accustomed to managing things alone. Their father hardly ever calls and lives 3 states away. I therefore don't freak out when anything seems strange. Even though I pay attention, What transpired on Thursday night made me wonder how many times I've failed to notice the warning signs in the past. We never realized how close we've come. In Laurel Glen, a little Tennessee town that has grown just enough to have a store. It was a typical evening. Essentially a Walmart knockoff, but with less expensive lighting and even less expensive employee. Training. My youngest, Chloe, wanted new folders for the upcoming school year, and my oldest, Emma, had been reminding me 4 days that her gym shoes no longer fit. So we headed out after supper. Despite my fatigue, I assumed we would finish everything out immediately. Out on the edge of the lot, we parked beneath the fading street light. 5 minutes after getting out of the automobile, your shirt was still stuck to your back due to the humidity. Chloe wondered why the moon was so orange, and I told her that it was most likely due to either pollution or humidity, or both. That's how I remember it. It's probably the apocalypse, Emma replied, rolling her eyes. This was as upbeat as she normally is before going shopping. We entered through the garden side door. It's never too crowded. Like a wall, the air conditioner struck us. Emma took out her phone as Chloe, as usual, jumped into the trolley. I quickly became bored and grabbed a basket, not expecting much. After maybe 5 minutes of wandering, we turned a corner close to the Halloween area. The candy had already been distributed in early September. Foam tombstones, giant Kit Kat bags, and plastic pumpkins. When Chloe saw the caramel apple lollipops, she let out a squeal. Then it took place. A man without a cart, perhaps in his mid-30s, with a buzzkit and a simple t-shirt, quickly rounded the same corner from the other side. He almost collided with us. He nearly bumped into our cart, but he muttered something, avoided eye contact, and stopped directly next to the candies. I whispered, "Excuse me," out of habit. I reasoned that he might have been rushing, but there was something off about the way he stood. In contrast to someone who genuinely desired candy, he wasn't picking it. He was only partly paying attention to us. Chloe requested permission to snap a photo of a ghost-shaped candy bag. The man literally flinched, as if the sound had surprised him. Then he gave me a fleeting glimpse before quickly averting his eyes, which made my skin crawl. He had nothing in his hands, his jaw was clenched, and his eyes were jittery, just standing. They're acting like you're searching through candy. No cart, no basket. I ignored it and steered the cart away. Women's pajamas was where we went. They had fluffy socks that Chloe liked, and Emma wanted new leggings. When I met him again, I was attempting to concentrate on sizes. The same man, with a huge bag of Halloween candy, now clumsily held in both arms, was strolling by slowly. He wasn't trying to find clothing. He wasn't acting at all. He simply went past rather closer than anyone should go in an open aisle. He was not shopping, but I followed him as he turned toward the shoes. He was observing. At first, I remained silent. Perhaps I was dreaming. Perhaps he simply lacked spatial awareness. Desperately, I wanted to believe that, across the aisle, the girls moved toward the boys' area. I looked up while still rummaging through my pajama trousers. Now dressed as the boy, the man moved slowly around the racks while clutching the same absurd candy bag as if it were a baby. He paused close to the end cap, glanced around idly, and then fixed my gaze on my girls for a brief but sufficient amount of time. Without hesitation, I moved to stand between him and the females. "Do you see that man?" I said to Emma in a whisper. She called it the candy creep. He has been circling. Yes. I experienced I feel a chill. It was more than just my paranoia. Emma had also observed. After passing through one of those tiny cloth dividers that we used to divide the aisles, we entered the girls' clothing area. In order to keep both kids in sight, I hoisted Chloe into the cart and began to travel more slowly, while observing. It was several minutes before I saw him again. I was on the verge of lowering my defenses when he reappeared in the girls' area, carrying the same bag, while feigning to gaze at glittering Justice shirts that were obviously meant for primary school-aged children. He continued to peer with sharp, fast looks. He snapped his head away and shuffled a few paces, feigning to peruse. As soon as I got his attention, I took out my phone and turned the card away. I didn't even be aware of what I intended to do, make a call and snap a picture of him. Then he did something that made my stomach turn over. He took out his phone, looked at it, typed something, and then looked right at me. I froze. He then ducked back through the partition and looped around to the boy's side again, standing at the far opening with a perfect line of sight into the girl's clothes. I was no longer calm. My skin felt electrified. Something was wrong, really, wrong. Then I noticed another man standing next to electronics. He was older, perhaps in his mid-40s, bald, with his arms crossed, and he was staring straight at me. He turned aside once more and left as if nothing had occurred. I kept my children in the cart, both of them now aware that something was strange, and I said softly to Emma, "Don't wander," while I walked quickly over to the junior area and stood there beside a half-empty rack of phone covers, pretending to be perusing tank tops. "Remain near. We may be heading out soon." A third guy appeared as I looked around. I told myself, "If you're right, get out," as he entered the girl's clothes as if he belonged there, picked up a justice hoodie, put it down, and went toward the baby clothes. He then returned, looked at Chloe in the cart, and didn't even bat an eye when I stared him down. "No one will make fun of you if you're mistaken." The strange sensation went away, and I began breathing deeply again in my chest. We checked out quickly, but I still paused and attempted to finish. I pushed us toward the women's clothing and kept looking, but I didn't see them again. What if I was right? What if they were watching us, coordinating? My hands were shaking as I packed the trunk, drove straight home, locked the doors, and spent hours sitting on the couch staring at the front door. Now that it's almost 2 in the morning, I can't sleep. These weren't men shopping. They weren't alone. They weren't random. They were observing. What if they were waiting for 1 second, just one, for me to let my guard down? The sweets and the sweatshirt were props. And tonight they screamed. I'll call the store in the morning. Maybe check if there's tape. Maybe just report it, so they have it on record. I don't expect them to do anything, but maybe they should know. I don't have proof, names, photos, or video, but I have instincts. I grew up in a tired Appalachian town that most people just pass through, the kind of place where every third house has a broken porch light, and the only place to buy groceries after 9 p.m. is Walmart. It wasn't a bad town, exactly, but perhaps another mom won't be fortunate enough to notice when the ones who linger get too close. But I was 15 the year it happened, just old enough to see the world for what it was, but still naive enough to think I could laugh my way through the parts that scared me. That fall, my sister Amanda and I had established a stupid tradition of going to the local Walmart every Wednesday night after dinner with our dad, who would make us go to pick up things we forgot on Sunday. We didn't mind. It all began that night, when it was colder than usual, early October, and the wind was kicking. Amanda was 17 years old, funny, loud, and fearless, and she made those dull trips feel like something out of a comedy sketch. We would make fun of the strange people we saw there, especially late at night, when they crept out like cockroaches under fluorescent lights. Asterisk in the Pine Hill Walmart parking lot. My dad parked his old SUV near the cart return, complaining about the crowds and the cold, and told us to hurry. By the time we reached the seasonal aisle, Amanda and I were giggling and whispering, and Halloween candy was everywhere. She challenged me to put a bag of pumpkin-shaped Peeps in my hoodie pocket, just to frighten Dad. As we reached the end of an aisle, she gave me a hard ribcage and pointed out, "Yo, that guy is giving full-on creepy uncle energy," she said beneath her breath. I looked up and saw him, tall and lanky, with pale skin, thick glasses that magnified his eyes, and brown hair parted perfectly down the middle, greasy and combed so precisely it looked drawn on. He was wearing an oversized tan jacket with a flannel collar, jeans that looked a size too big, and off-white sneakers that were stained. He was standing near the clearance DVDs, looking at nothing, just standing. That's a dine special waiting to happen. Amanda grinned. Probably owns a van with no windows. We didn't think he heard us, and he didn't even flinch. I laughed, uneasy, but playing along. We continued walking, but he kept coming up. 3 aisles down, he was once more examining canned soup, then toothpaste, then electronics, just standing close to a rack of cheap headphones. He was always silent. After a while, we checked out, packed up the groceries, and headed home, but the man didn't follow us out. So that should have been the end of it. Dad never noticed, too busy complaining about the rising cost of meat, despite the fact that it should have been a humorous memory between Amanda and me. I was unable to fall asleep that night. I attributed it to the soda I had with dinner, but I couldn't explain the pressure in my chest. I had the covers pulled up under my chin, the window box fan humming like white noise, but I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was watching me. Not just there was a feeling that persisted 4 weeks. I remember getting up, going to the window, and looking out at the backyard. It was too dark to see much, but my gaze lingered on the trees, and now the backyard ran straight into the woods. Nothing moved, but I locked the window just in case. My dad blamed horror movies. Amanda said I probably had a guilty conscience from stealing Peeps, but it didn't feel like guilt, and my mom said it was too much caffeine. Every night, like clockwork, I would wake up between 2 and 3 in the morning, sweaty, my heart pounding, and my mouth dry. Then, on Saturday, my parents left me home alone while Amanda was at a sleepover, and they went to visit relatives 3 hours away. I told them I didn't mind being alone because I usually enjoyed the silence, but on that particular day, the air felt heavier than usual, as if it were pressing in on me. I called my friend Jeremy, told him to come pick me up and drive around for a while, maybe smoke, maybe just chill somewhere that wasn't my damn house, and he said he'd be there in 10 o'clock. I tried to shake it off, played some games, watched YouTube, and even tried napping, but I kept feeling the need to look out the window, down the hall, and behind the shower curtain, curb, and waited. I knew something wasn't right when I got into his car because Jeremy wasn't chatting normally. He kept looking in the mirrors, and he was holding on to the wheel too tightly. "You good?" I asked, and he gave me a single nod. "Yeah, just this." I didn't think much of the guy who has been following me since I left my area, but now he's blowing lights to stay behind me. I tensed up. "What kind of car?" He looked again, and I saw a silver Toyota, an older model, with a broken right headlight. I believe the plate begins with a P at the next red light. The silver car pulled up next to us, and the man from Walmart was sitting in the driver's seat. He had the same thick glasses, tan jacket, and dead eyes, but now his jaw was locked tight, his teeth were exposed, and he was staring directly at me. My stomach flipped, and I turned around in my seat. My heart stopped. Jeremy thought it after. He slapped his palm on the horn, and I shouted. For about a minute, we were silent except for the sound of the engine and my labored breathing. "What the hell is going on?" Jeremy eventually whispered. I don't know. That's the Walmart guy, the one Amanda and I used to laugh about," I stammered. "But he was outside my window. You saw him." "No, I felt him for weeks, but I didn't realize until now. The police station in Pinner Hill has a squat brick building that was once a library. We pulled him forcefully, tires screeching, and I was still shaking when we got inside. Jeremy swung sharp onto Cedar Drive. "Screw this. I'm going to the police station. Officer Reeves." I'll never forget how Officer Reeves's expression transformed when he punched the license plate into the system. He was a big man with a kind face and skeptic eyes. He listened to Jeremy's account, then mine, and then asked Jeremy if he remembered the plate. Jeremy recited it from memory. "We're sending a car to your place," he informed me, after picking up the phone and calling to units before turning to face us. "And want to search for the vehicle. Hold on tight." My folks were already on their way back when they received a call. I assumed it was the end, that he would disappear, that it was all a mistake or misunderstanding, but 15 minutes later a patrol unit discovered the man, who was no longer driving, digging through the bushes outside my bedroom window in my front yard, and when they arrested him, he had a duffel bag concealed behind the shrubs, containing condoms, duct tape, zip ties, a taser, and a rusted crowbar. And that wasn't all. The local doll took it seriously. Between the stalking, the intent, and the items in his bag, they had enough to hold the man accountable. The man, whose name I won't repeat here, was a registered sex offender with a history of stalking minors. He wasn't even from Pinner Hill. He had served time, been released, and drifted from town to town using aliases. He had been living out of his car, following us out of Walmart that night and parked across from our house 4 days, waiting and observing, without bail. He never confessed. He didn't have to. After that, everything fell into place. I didn't sleep well 4 months. We installed motion lights, got a window lock, and kept my bedroom light on every night. Dad kept his old shotgun close at hand. Amanda never joked in Walmart again. And the scariest aspect wasn't what actually happened, but rather what nearly happened the unobtrusive way he entered our life. How simple it was to ignore him, and how we smiled, believing we were. I was 22 when it happened, and even after 10 years, I still find myself thinking about it at the most odd moments. Like when I'm in a store, when someone walks a little too close behind me, or when I hear a stranger say something a little strange. It happened in 2013, and I was living in a suburb outside of Savannah, Georgia. I was married young at 20, and by 22, I had a daughter who was almost 2 years old, a mortgage we barely kept up with, and a husband who worked 50 hours a week installing HVAC systems. We weren't planning on going to Walmart that night, but rather the tourist favorite historic area with cobblestones and Spanish moss, the area with endless parking lots, grocery stores, and chain restaurants every half mile. We were almost out of wipes. I needed milk, and we had eaten dinner leftover meatloaf. I recall, and the baby had messed up with the mashed potatoes. You know, one of those very fast excursions. My husband, Evan, consented, saying he would accompany me even though he didn't want to, and we bundled up the baby, strapped her into the car seat, and made the short journey to the one on Forsyth. It was a Tuesday, perhaps around 8:45 p.m. I remember because the sun was already down, and the store looked half dead. Only a few scattered cars in the lot, buzzing yellow street lights casting shadows inside. It was cold. Those fluorescent lights always made my skin feel dry. Evan and I split up. He wanted to check the clearance rack near sporting goods. He was constantly looking for cheap fishing lures or on-sale ammunition. So I led the cart and our daughter to the baby section. I was only there for 5 minutes when I heard someone say, "Excuse me." I turned, expecting a store employee, but instead I saw a short woman, maybe 5 feet even, Asian, probably in her 50s, with shoulder-length black hair and a composed, kind smile, standing almost awkwardly near the cart, carrying a small black tablet and a large-looking crossbody purse. "Yes," I said, already stepping back a little. "Do you believe in God?" I blinked as she asked. I was raised Catholic, but didn't attend church, so I wasn't sure how to respond. I was never good at confrontation, and I detested being impolite, especially when someone appeared lovely, so I just nodded quickly. "Yes," I murmured, and her eyes brightened, not warm, but brighter. "All right, I'd like to show you something," she said. She turned the tablet toward me and tapped the screen, and a slideshow appeared, with English language words, lines like "God is not a man," "She's waiting," and abstract looking yet faintly. Religious imagery. Clouds. Ao tried to push the cart ahead and murmured, "I'm sorry," but there was a luminous figure and some writing in a language I didn't understand. "It's crucial," she said hastily. "Just 1 minute. You think so? This is for you." Then I looked down at my daughter, who was playing with the small steering wheel on the cart, and tried not to be impolite. "No, thank you," I said more firmly, and she continued to follow. She followed me down each aisle and started talking more about a woman prophet, a secret truth, and an invitation to get together. Then she gave me a business card with the name of the Spirit and Bride Church and a gold cross on the front, but on the back was a handwritten local address, not a church, just a house number and a street I had never heard of. "I'm sorry," I repeated, now obviously attempting to leave, but she persisted. "Are you a local resident? Do you want peace for your daughter?" She inquired. "Security. This Thursday is our meeting day. Bring her here." I simply nodded and stuffed the card into my handbag, refusing to say anything else. With a cheap fishing knife in his hand, Evan came up behind me and said, "You good, babe?" The woman froze. She glanced at him, and her expression abruptly altered. She gave no sign of saying goodbye or smiling. I didn't tell Evan what had happened. I simply turned and went quickly away toward the rear of the store. "Not really," I responded, adding that a woman was attempting to persuade me to attend her religion, and he gave me a strange look. We paid and departed, and I didn't give it another thought. 4 months. Tasha, a girl I went to high school with, posted one of those warning to all women statuses, and I noticed it because she mentioned a Walmart. "If you go to the Walmart on Windsor Road, please be careful." It said, "There's a group pretending to be part of a church." I was half asleep on the couch, scrolling through Facebook while my daughter napped. It was January. There are 2 males and an elderly Asian woman who approach ladies and ask whether they believe in God. She then gives them a phony church location, which isn't a church. People have vanished, and my cousin nearly got hit by a van. Since I hadn't used that bag in months, and the card was still in the inner zipper pocket, I took the old purse out of the closet and threw it on the floor. The police are looking into it, but they haven't done anything. Please share this. I felt cold. When I looked up the address, I discovered that it was no longer on a street. The listing had been removed, and Google Maps displayed a fuzzy house with boarded-up windows and a red-painted door. Gold cross, identical handwritten address, but that wasn't the worst part. "You think it's the same person?" I asked Evan as I ushered him into the room. "Same exact story," I muttered. "Same pitch, same tablet," he said, turning pale. After we both looked at the screen, I had another thought. She spotted my daughter and knew I had one, but she asked me if I wanted to keep her safe. We attempted to report it, and I dialed the non-emergency line. How many other ladies did she say that to? I spoke with a nice but exhausted woman who took my information and promised to keep an eye on things. Nothing ever came of it, but I never went into a store alone at night again after that, and I destroyed that card. 2 years later, in 2015, there was a brief article on the local news website about Savannah police looking into reports of a group luring women under the pretense of no arrests, no names, religious recruitment, but I was aware of that they mentioned the neighborhood. It was the location of the address. When I read it, a chill went through me. It wasn't only me. It was authentic. I occasionally try to picture what would have occurred if Evan hadn't arrived. I would have followed her to that meeting if she hadn't backed off. I believe concerning the women who didn't have a suitable companion, and I'm scared of it. Her smile, the way she despite my refusal, her eyes remained composed, as if she already knew she was getting what she wanted.